His pregnant wife dies in labor. In-laws and mistress celebrate, until the doctor whispers, "It's twins." If you've ever been blindsided by someone you love, you'll want to hear this story. Welcome back, my amazing family. Before we begin, I want to take a moment for anyone who's ever been betrayed, dismissed, or made to feel small. May you find strength without losing your softness. May justice find you without hardening your heart. And may every tear you've cried in silence become wisdom, not bitterness. This space is for healing, truth, and growth. If this speaks to you, tell me in the comments, what lesson did pain teach you? Naomi Carter had always liked grocery shopping early in the morning, before the city fully woke up. At 7:30 a.m., the Whole Foods market on H Street felt calmer, almost gentle. The bakery smelled like warm bread and sugar. Naomi pushed her cart slowly down the aisle, one hand resting on the curve of her stomach, the other gripping the handle like it might float away if she let go. She was 7 months pregnant and already exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. People smiled at her. Some nodded politely. A cashier she recognized asked how far along she was. Naomi smiled back because that's what you do when strangers project happiness onto your body. She answered automatically. Due in April. First baby. Excited. Blessed. She didn't stay alone. Her husband, Ethan Walker, hadn't come with her. Government contracts, late meetings, last-minute calls from the Hill. That was always the excuse. Ethan worked in defense consulting, the kind of job that sounded impressive without ever being explained. They lived in a quiet row house in Northeast D.C., renovated just enough to feel expensive without losing its age. From the outside, their life looked curated, stable, successful. Inside, it felt hollow. Naomi placed almond milk in the cart, then paused when a sharp ache pulsed through her lower back. It passed quickly, but she stayed still for a moment, breathing through it. Pregnancy came with discomfort, everyone said. Normal aches. Normal pains. She had learned not to complain. Ethan hated complaints. He called them negativity. When she got home, Ethan was already gone. A note sat on the kitchen counter in his neat handwriting. Early meeting. Back late. Love you. No heart. No smiley face. Just punctuation. His mother, Margaret Walker, called an hour later. Did you eat? Margaret asked, skipping any greeting. Yes, Naomi said. Good. You need to be careful. Carrying a baby is serious responsibility. Naomi bit back a response. Margaret had moved to D.C. 2 years earlier, shortly after Naomi married Ethan. She framed it as coincidence. A new chapter. But she was everywhere. At doctor appointments. At the house. In decisions Naomi hadn't agreed to yet. That afternoon, Naomi felt tired enough to lie down before noon. Her phone buzzed once. A message from Ethan, running late tonight. Don't wait up. She stared at the screen longer than necessary. The baby kicked. Hard. She smiled despite herself and whispered, Easy, little one. What Naomi didn't know was that Ethan wasn't running late. He was sitting in a parked car across town, laughing softly at something a woman beside him had said. A woman with manicured nails and no visible responsibilities pressing into her ribs from the inside. Later that evening, Naomi cooked dinner for one. She folded tiny baby clothes while the news murmured in the background. She paused when another wave of discomfort rolled through her abdomen. Stronger this time. Longer. She checked the calendar. Too early. Probably nothing, she told herself. By midnight, she couldn't sleep. By 1 a.m., the pain had a rhythm. By 2 a.m., she knew. She called Ethan. Straight to voicemail. She called again. And again. When he finally answered, his voice sounded irritated. I'll come, he said. Give me a minute. Naomi hung up and stood slowly, gripping the edge of the bed as another contraction surged through her. Fear crept in, quiet but persistent. This wasn't how it was supposed to start. Naomi didn't have time to worry about anyone but herself when the first wave hit with real force. She called MedStar Washington Hospital Center, her voice shaking, and within minutes an ambulance was at her row house. Ethan arrived 20 minutes later, or at least, that's what Naomi would later calculate. When he stepped into the emergency room, he was dressed for work, pressed suit, leather briefcase in hand. He didn't look panicked. His hair was slightly disheveled, but his eyes were detached. "I'll wait over there," he said, pointing vaguely toward the visitor chairs. He didn't touch her, didn't hold her hand, didn't even ask if she was okay. Naomi wanted to scream, but another contraction stole her breath. Nurses wheeled her toward labor and delivery. Machines blinked in anticipation, cords dangling like wires from some alien ship. Naomi could barely breathe through the pain, each wave sharper than the last. Ethan came and went, sometimes checking a monitor, sometimes disappearing behind a curtained doorway, phone pressed to his ear. Naomi noticed his glances weren't concerned. They were calculating. Something in the way he watched her without touching her, without asking questions, set her nerves on fire. Her mother, Tanya Carter, called from home. Naomi tried to speak, but the pain made her words break apart. "Mom, I think, labor," she whispered. "You're okay, baby. You're going to be fine," her mother said. But Naomi didn't feel fine. She felt a warning, a pull in her gut that screamed danger. By hour 10, Naomi began to notice blood. Small at first, then spreading. The calm professionalism in the room snapped. Doctors rushed in, machines beeped faster, orders were shouted. Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, phone in hand. He watched. Not her. Just the monitors. The lead doctor's voice rang clear. "She's hemorrhaging. We need an oar now." Naomi felt herself slipping. Faint, dizzy, and weak. She didn't understand fully what was happening, only that her life was unraveling minute by minute. And then, like someone flipping a switch, the world went dark. If you're still watching, comment below how you would react if someone you loved betrayed you in the worst way possible. Don't skip this. Things are about to get intense. Naomi's vision began to blur, the edges of the room bending and folding in on themselves like wet paper. The bright hospital lights above her pulsed, then dimmed, then pulsed again. Machines screamed alarms she didn't understand. High-pitched, urgent, relentless. Hands pressed down hard on her abdomen. Too hard. Voices overlapped, sharp and panicked. Someone shouted numbers. Someone else cursed under their breath. Naomi tried to speak. Tried to ask what was happening. But her tongue felt heavy, useless, like it didn't belong to her anymore. The doctor's voice cut through the chaos, louder now. "Get her blood now. We're losing her fast. Losing her." The words floated above Naomi, detached, unreal. She wanted to laugh at how dramatic it sounded. She wanted to scream that she was right there. Her eyes searched the room desperately until they found Ethan. He wasn't holding her hand. He wasn't looking at her face. He was leaning against the wall, phone pressed to his ear, one foot crossed casually over the other. "Is the baby okay?" he asked. "Not we. Not she. Not my wife. Just the baby." The question lodged itself deep inside Naomi's chest, colder than the pain ripping through her body. Something inside her went still. Not from blood loss. Not from shock. From betrayal. A nurse shouted, "Her heart rate is dropping." Another voice followed, strained. "She's crashing." The monitor let out a long, unbroken tone. "She's flatlining," someone yelled. The world tilted, then collapsed. Darkness rushed in fast, swallowing sound, swallowing pain, swallowing everything. Naomi felt herself slipping, falling into a place with no edges and no ground. Time stopped meaning anything. Later, how much later she couldn't tell, voices returned. Distant, muted, careless. "She's gone," someone whispered outside the room. A pause. Then another voice. Lighter. relieved. So, we can move forward now. Naomi understood then. They weren't mourning her. They weren't shocked. They were already planning life without her. And somewhere deep inside that darkness, something flickered. Her finger twitched. Just slightly. A faint pulse of defiance. Naomi wasn't gone. They just thought she was. Naomi floated in darkness, suspended somewhere between breath and silence. There was no pain now. Just awareness. Heavy. Relentless. Her body wouldn't respond. Not to panic. Not to will. But her mind refused to let go. Voices drifted in and out, muffled at first, then clearer. Too clear. "So, she's gone?" Ethan asked. The question landed like a blade. No tremble. No break in his voice. Just curiosity. Margaret exhaled sharply. "Not officially. But she's costing money every day. Insurance. ICU care. Machines. All for someone who's not coming back." Naomi's pulse screamed inside her skull. She wanted to fight. To scream. To prove she was still there. But to them, she wasn't a wife. She wasn't a mother. She wasn't even a person. She was a problem to be managed. Their footsteps moved closer, then farther away. Papers rustled. Decisions were being made without her. About her. Naomi pushed inward, concentrating on anything she could control. Her breath. Her thoughts. Her existence. Then it happened. A faint twitch. Just one finger. So small no one noticed. But Naomi did. It was proof. She was still fighting. And this time, she would remember everything. And before we continue, what part of the world are you watching from? Comment your city below. Let's build a global community rooted in justice, resilience, and second chances. If this story is hitting you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who believes in healing, and your support brings us closer to our 1K subscriber milestone, and it truly means more than you know. Naomi lay motionless in her hospital bed, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with mechanical rhythm. To anyone watching, she looked gone. But her mind was awake, listening, collecting. Across town, in a sleek apartment near Capitol Hill, laughter spilled into the night. Claire Reynolds tilted her head back as champagne fizzed over the rim of her glass. "I told you it would work out," she said easily. Margaret Walker adjusted a vase on the table, surveying the room like a general inspecting conquered territory. "It's finally over," she said with satisfaction. "We can breathe again." They talked about the baby. Not about names whispered with love. Not about hopes or dreams. Only logistics. Custody. Money. Timing. Naomi heard it all. Every word wrapped around her consciousness like a chain. They were celebrating her absence, planning a future that erased her completely. Then, back in the hospital room, the door opened softly. A doctor stepped inside, voice low, cautious, almost reverent. He leaned close to Naomi's ear. "Naomi, there's something you need to know," he whispered. Her mind sharpened. "It's twins." The words detonated inside her. 2 heartbeats. 2 lives. One had slipped away quietly. The other was still here. Alive. Grief and fury collided in her chest. Every betrayal, every laugh, every plan she'd overheard turned into fuel. They thought the story was over. It wasn't. Naomi's mind spun in the silence that followed. The doctor's words echoed again and again. Twins. Even as her body had failed her, it had created life. One loss. One miracle. The doctor leaned closer, watching her face carefully. "Naomi," he whispered again, slower this time. "If you can hear me, try to move." She focused everything she had left on one task. Her finger. It twitched. Barely. The doctor inhaled sharply. "You can hear me," he said, awe creeping into his voice. "You're in there." Hope surged, tangled with rage. Naomi pushed harder. A toe flexed. An eyelid fluttered. Each movement felt monumental, like dragging herself through concrete. "You might be able to respond soon," the doctor said gently. Outside that room, life went on. Ethan signed papers. Margaret made calls. Claire planned a future that didn't include Naomi at all. They celebrated. They relaxed, completely unaware that Naomi was awake, listening, calculating. A quiet fire settled deep in her chest. She wasn't just alive. She was preparing to come back. And when she did, they would finally hear her. Pause for a second and imagine this. Everyone you trust thinks you're gone, celebrating your absence. But you can hear everything. What would you do? Comment below before we continue. This is where it gets intense. The machines beeped steadily, a slow, rhythmic reminder that Naomi was still tethered to life. Her eyelids fluttered. Once. Then again. A nurse noticed it first. "Wait, did you see that?" Naomi's eyes opened briefly, unfocused, confused, then shut again. Her fingers twitched, just barely, like her body was remembering how to exist. "She's emerging," the nurse said carefully. "Get the doctor." Over the next several hours, Naomi drifted in and out of consciousness. She couldn't speak, couldn't move on command. But she was no longer gone. Doctors confirmed it quietly, professionally. "She's waking up from the coma. This will be slow. Days. Maybe weeks." Ethan stood at the foot of the bed, frozen. Margaret clutched her purse too tightly. Claire stayed silent, eyes darting between Naomi's face and the monitors. Naomi heard everything. Still. The next day, Naomi squeezed a nurse's hand. Once. Weak, but deliberate. On the second day, she followed movement with her eyes. On the third day, she nodded when asked simple questions. And on the fifth day, after hours of speech therapy, after frustration and tears and burning effort, Naomi finally spoke. Her voice was hoarse, fragile, but unmistakably clear. "I heard everything." The room went silent. The doctor stopped writing. The nurse froze. Ethan's face drained of color. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Naomi swallowed, gathering strength she had been storing for weeks. "I heard the plans, the money, the baby." Margaret stepped back. Claire's composure shattered. The doctor's tone shifted instantly. "Naomi, can you tell us exactly what you remember?" Tears streamed down Naomi's face, not from fear, but from release. From victory. From knowing they no longer controlled the story. "Everything," she whispered. Security was called. Hospital administration was notified. Social services arrived quietly. Later that evening, Naomi turned her head toward the nurse and whispered the words that changed everything. "Please call the police." Outside that hospital room, the people who celebrated her death realized something too late. Naomi hadn't just woken up. She had returned. And this time, she was being heard. If you think Naomi is done, think again. This is where the people who tried to bury her start facing justice. Comment below who you think will break first, Ethan, Margaret, or Claire. The reckoning didn't explode all at once. It arrived quietly, methodically. It began with questions. Hospital administrators sat beside Naomi's bed with clipboards and careful voices. Detectives followed, notepads open, eyes sharp. Naomi spoke slowly, still weak, pausing often, but her memory was precise. She recalled dates, voices, exact phrases, where people stood, what they laughed about. Every word she had overheard wasn't just trauma anymore. It was evidence. Ethan sat in the corner during the first interview, jaw tight, hands clasped together like he was praying. But when Naomi described the insurance conversation, his eyes flicked toward the door. When she mentioned the baby, his shoulders slumped. Margaret tried to take control. She always did. She corrected detectives. Interrupted Naomi. Laughed once, nervously, as if this were all a misunderstanding. It didn't land. When detectives asked Claire to step outside, she adjusted her coat, pasted on a polite smile, and said she'd be right back. She didn't look at Naomi. Not once. That was the last time Naomi saw her in person. Over the next few days, the hospital room became a revolving door. Social workers, lawyers, a representative from Child Protective Services who spoke gently but firmly. "You are the sole custodial parent," the woman said. "No one can make decisions for your child without you." Naomi cried then, quietly, relief flooding her chest so hard it hurt. Ethan's consequences came next. His employer placed him on immediate leave, then terminated his contract entirely. Word travels fast in D.C., especially when federal ethics and insurance fraud are involved. Friends stopped calling. Colleagues stopped responding. His phone went silent the same way Naomi's body once had. Margaret was charged formally. Conspiracy, fraud, attempted exploitation. The woman who once strutted hospital halls now sat stiffly in interrogation rooms, asking for lawyers and realizing authority had finally abandoned her. And Claire. She deleted her social media, cleared her apartment, quit her job, moved without leaving a forwarding address. The woman who celebrated Naomi's death disappeared the moment Naomi proved she was alive. Justice didn't roar. It closed in. Weeks later, Naomi returned home. The house felt wrong at first. Too quiet. Too full of ghosts. She opened windows. Let light in. Repainted the walls. Gave away furniture that held memories she refused to keep. In Northeast D.C., she rebuilt room by room, breath by breath. Late at night, Naomi held Jade against her chest, counting each tiny rise and fall. Every heartbeat reminded her how close she came to being erased, how easily others tried to rewrite her story. She kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered the truth she had earned. "They buried me while I was breathing." Jade stirred, warm and alive. Naomi straightened her shoulders. "But I came back. Have you ever felt underestimated or erased?" Naomi's story is proof that strength rises when the world counts you out. Comment, "I rise," if you relate before we close this story. Naomi stood alone in her living room as late afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows, settling softly across freshly painted walls and polished wooden floors. The house no longer felt like a place she had survived in. It felt like a place she belonged again. In her arms, Jade shifted inside, small and warm and impossibly real. Naomi rocked gently, instinctively, the way her body remembered even before her mind fully caught up. Every breath her daughter took felt like a miracle she refused to take for granted. For the first time in weeks, the silence wasn't threatening. It was peaceful. Naomi's thoughts drifted, uninvited but no longer painful. Ethan, Margaret, Claire. How easily they had spoken about her as if she were already gone. How casually they had laughed, planned, celebrated. They had erased her in their minds long before her heart ever stopped. But she was still here, alive, present, watching. Naomi walked slowly toward the window, Jade resting against her shoulder. Outside, Washington, D.C. moved on. Cars passed. People laughed on the sidewalk. Life continued, unaware of the quiet war that had been fought inside hospital walls and whispered conversations. She caught her reflection in the glass. Tired eyes. Softer now. Stronger too. A woman who had seen the ugliest side of love and survived it. Naomi turned toward the camera, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with calm authority. "If you've stayed with this story until now," she said gently, then you understand something most people never want to face. You know what it feels like to be dismissed, to be underestimated, to fight for your life while others decide your fate for you. She looked down at Jade, brushing a finger across her daughter's cheek. This isn't just my story, Naomi continued. It's for every person who was written off too soon. Every woman who was expected to disappear quietly. Every mother who had to become stronger than she ever planned to be. Her gaze lifted again, steady and intentional. And if this story moved you, if it stayed with you, then don't just watch and walk away. She leaned in slightly. Not aggressive. Just honest. Subscribe. Share this story. Be part of a community that believes in second chances, in resilience, that doesn't ask for permission to survive. A small pause. Enough to let it sink in. Then her tone shifted, firmer now. And if you're still here, still listening, and you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself why. You've witnessed a woman fight her way back from silence, from betrayal, from being counted out. Naomi held Jade a little closer. The least you can do is stand with her. Her voice softened one last time, carrying quiet power. They tried to bury me. A breath. But you don't bury mothers. Another breath. You plant us. The sunlight caught her face as she smiled, just slightly. And we grow back stronger.